What I learned from this book, Yes Please, by Amy Poehler, coming up right after this. Hey everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel. This is Yoel, so grateful to have you. And in today's video, I'm going to talk about a book that I read that I really enjoyed by Amy Poehler called Yes Please. I'm sure many of you, if not all of you, have heard of Amy Poehler, very famous comedian on Saturday Night Live, Parks and Recreation. She has all sorts of comedic routines at the Golden Globes and other award ceremonies, if I'm not mistaken. Just a very talented and amazingly accomplished woman. And sorry, Amy, if you're ever watching this, but I happen to have found your book at a library down the street from me, a free kind of lending library. But I am very glad that I did find it. So my apologies that I didn't actually buy it, although I would recommend to anybody watching this to buy the book, because it's filled with all sorts of amazing insights, as I'm going to share with you. And it's also hilariously funny, as you would expect from someone like Amy Poehler. And by the way, I find generally that I really enjoy reading from celebrities' books, biographies, or autobiographies. I find that they have a lot of amazing insights to share, and they can do it in a very entertaining way as well, which is really special. And I guess it's not surprising, seeing as that they've kind of risen to the top of the mountain, so to speak, to the point where they are famous and well known for their accomplishments. And Amy Poehler's book, Yes Please, is no exception. And what I feel the best way to do this is to actually read from her actual words, because she's a wizard of the words in a way that I cannot do it justice. So I just kind of picked, there's many lessons from this book, and I just picked some of the ones that stood out for me. And I'm going to read from various passages in her book. Okay, now the first lesson I got from her is about the demon voice that we all have within us. And again, I'm just going to read from here to underscore the point. This is from page 15 of her book. Okay, so she says here, that voice that talks badly to you is a demon voice. This very patient and determined demon shows up in your bedroom one day and refuses to leave. You are 6 or 12 or 15, and you look in the mirror and you hear a voice so awful and mean that it takes your breath away. It tells you that you are fat and ugly and you don't deserve love. And the scary part is the demon is your own voice. But it doesn't sound like you. It sounds like a strangled and seductive version of you. Think Darth Vader or an angry Lauren Bacall. The good news is there are ways to make it stop talking. The bad news is it never goes away. If you are lucky, you can live a life where the demon is generally forgotten, relegated to a back shelf in a closet next to your old field hockey equipment. You may even have days or years when you think the demon is gone, but it is not. It is sitting very quietly waiting for you. This motherfucker is patient. It says, take your time. It says, go fall in love and exercise and surround yourself with beautiful people, and surround yourself with people who make you feel beautiful. It says, don't worry, I'll wait. And then one day you go through a breakup, or you can't lose your baby weight, or you look at your reflection in the soup spoon and that slimy bugger is back. It moves its sour mouth up to your ear and reminds you that you are fat and ugly and don't deserve love. And just to move forward, just to sum it up here, she says on page 21, decide what your currency is early. Let go of what you will never have. People who do this are happier and sexier. Honestly, I don't know if you could see this in the video. I was actually getting emotional as I read that. It's such beautiful words. And essentially the idea that I take from it, and Amy may have had other things in mind as she wrote this, but just how much that self-doubt demon, that self-deprecating, that criticism, that inner judge that we have, from any sort of negativity that we carry within ourselves, and we convince ourselves that it's true, but really all it is a demon. And I love the way she calls it a demon, because what that allows one to do is to really separate the actual voice that we have inside by kind of caricaturizing it into a demon. And that actually is a very helpful way to sort of see that that voice that we do carry within us is not us. It's a demon. It's outside of us. Okay, so don't judge yourself, A, for what these thoughts and feelings that do crop up that you have, don't judge yourself for it, and don't judge yourself for thinking that is you, that these thoughts and feelings are real. No, it's just a demon that's really separate and apart from yourself. And I just love the way she kind of puts it into a caricature so that you can take it and kind of contain it as something apart from yourself. And the point isn't to try and think that, don't judge yourself that it hasn't gone away, because as Amy says, it never does go away, but you learn to live with it. She kind of talks about putting it in the shelf or buried away or something like that. I would have to speak to her to get her intentions on that. To me, that sounds more like suppressing or repressing. To me, it's more kind of like learning to embrace those aspects of yourself and realizing that you can live with yourself in that way. And she gives a great sum up, as I read towards the end, about really understanding how you can do that, which is don't try and be anything, everything, like the show, Everything Everywhere All at Once, or the movie, I should say. Okay. I know for myself, for example, I've been bodybuilding and going to the gym and working out, but there's always that guy who's 5 inches taller and have much better, much bigger muscles and be much more well built and handsomer and this and that. That never goes away. But as soon as you understand what your value is and embrace what you have, and don't try and look elsewhere and try and compete and compare yourself to anybody else, you can really learn to live and coexist, if you will, with that demon, rather than trying to suppress it or pretend it's not there or to beat yourself up for having it. So I just thought that was such a beautiful way of putting it, that Amy put it in her book. Okay, the next thing that Amy talks about is a very poignant idea. She talks about apologizing, and she has a whole story there about something that occurred with her. And I'm not going to get into the whole story, but just to again read a passage from page 71 of her book, if I can find it, as I'm yammering on over here. There's that demon again. You see, I'm saying yammering on. Why am I self-deprecating? I've got a lot of great things to say, and it's not yammering. But in any case, so here at page 71, this is what Amy says about apologizing. A word about apologizing. It's hard to do it without digging yourself in deeper. It's also scary, and that's why we avoid the pain. We want so badly to plead our case and tell our story. The bad news is that everybody has a story. Everyone has a version of how things went down and how they participated. It's hard to untangle facts and feelings. And that is just so true in many ways about apologizing. Like it's very hard to give a pure, unadulterated apology where we genuinely feel remorse for something we may have said or something we did or something we didn't do and how it made somebody else feel. We have that impulse to want to defend ourselves. Most of the time, or maybe not most, oftentimes, depending on the person or how evolved we are, we don't even get to the point of apologizing. Okay, we're kind of like rationalizing it and justifying it in our minds. Well, I don't have to apologize because that, or really it's all her fault or it's all his fault. And Amy really sums that up nicely by showing that is something that really can get in the way when it comes time to apologizing. But as she says later on, and I didn't highlight this in my notes, but later on she talks about how the act of apology can be such a release. Okay, and it's really liberating. And that's really an amazing thing. And it also helps you kind of surrender that shame, because a lot of times we have shame not only for the things that we may have done or said or did or didn't do, but a lot of times we have subsequent shame for not actually going through and apologizing to the person who deserves that apology. Okay, so I just thought that Amy really summed up feelings that could really be underlying the challenges and the difficulty and the pain associated with apologies. But if you can recognize that, as I always talk about in my videos, and have awareness of it, you can really work with that to be able to make that right decision. And even if we don't always succeed, a lot of times we will bury away that apology monster, so to speak, if you will. But if we continue to have that awareness and realize just how freeing and liberating it is, we'll be that much more better equipped to do it, just as Amy was. Again, I didn't go through her whole story, but ultimately she ended up apologizing. As she says herself, it was an overdue apology. It was difficult and challenging for her, but she went through and did it and was all the more better for it. And not only was she all the more better for it, so was the actual person who she ended up apologizing to, which in this case was actually to various individuals associated with a woman of special needs. Now, the next thing that Amy talks about that particularly speaks to me as a divorcee is she talks about divorce. Now, many of you know that Amy Poehler was married to Will Arnett, fellow Canadian, I might say, fellow Canadian to me, I should say. I'm originally from Canada. and they were married for many years, and unfortunately their marriage ended in divorce. They have 2 children together, and she touches upon the idea of divorce. And again, she just words it so well. I'm going to read right from pages 87 and 88 of her book on this, okay? There's a lot of humorous anecdotes about divorce as well. I wish I could get into all of it, but I'm not going to sit here and read the entire book, just certain passages. So she says here, I understand why people read so many books on divorce. When you are a person going through a divorce, you feel incredibly alone. Yet you are constantly reminded by society of how frequently divorce happens and how common it has become. You aren't allowed to feel special, but no one understands the specific ways you are in pain. Imagine spreading everything you care about on a blanket and then tossing the whole thing up in the air. The process of divorce is about loading up that blanket, throwing it up, watching it all spin, and worrying what stuff will break when it lands. It's no wonder we want to find answers and comfort. I don't want to talk about my divorce, she says, because it's too sad and too personal. I also don't like people knowing my shit. I will say a few things. I am proud of how my ex-husband Will and I have been taking care of our children. I am beyond grateful he is their father, and I don't think a 10-year marriage constitutes a failure. That being said, getting a divorce really sucks. I'm skipping a bit. Any painful experience makes you see things differently. It also reminds you of the simple truths that we purposely forget every day, or else we would never get out of bed. Things like nothing lasts forever and relationships can end. The best that can happen is you learn a little more about what you can handle and you stay soft through the pain. Perhaps you feel a little wiser. Maybe your experience can be of help to others. Again, I get super emotional when I read that chapter because it so sums up so many of my feelings about what I went through in divorce and how very few people, if any, I had very close friends that I was able to talk to, and I do feel like 1 or 2 of them got it, but for the most part, nobody really got it. And she actually has a whole comedic bit afterwards about different book titles on divorce, and one of them is Get Over It. I can't tell you how many times I heard that from people who just didn't understand. People really who had no business saying that to me. They didn't understand the depths of what I, Yoel, as a person was experiencing, because it was a personal pain to me, like Amy talks about, okay? And I also related a lot to the idea of, being able to feel like you've grown from the process and feeling wiser and more experienced, and also the ability of, having gone through that experience, the ability to be able to share that experience with others. I've been very fortunate in that sense that unfortunately, a lot of men in particular have reached out to me, following their divorces or when they're in the process. And because of my experience, having gone through it, I've been able to share my experiences and hopefully pass on that wisdom. Okay, now there was one other thing. I actually closed this book too early that I wanted to touch upon because it really spoke to me as I was reading this, was that, yes, she writes here that I don't think a 10-year marriage constitutes failure. I remember one person in particular, and I am very grateful to him for a lot of things in my life, but in this regard, it was kind of similar to what Amy Poehler is saying. He said to me, like, chalk it up to a bad investment. And I remember thinking, I don't remember if I said it to him or thinking it, that this marriage produced a lot of children. I was married for many years, and I don't look at it as a bad investment at all. A bad investment wouldn't gain me any profits, but I profited with children. I profited with, I could say this now, with many good times and good memories. Unfortunately, things didn't last because, as Amy Poehler reminds us, nothing really does last forever. And ultimately, I would not chalk it up to a failure, just as Amy Poehler says that I chalk it up to a success, and it ran its course, and now it's time to move on. Just like for therapists, for example, I had an amazing therapist, and I felt that it had run its course, and I moved on to another therapist. But that doesn't mean that the work that I did with the previous therapist was a failure. It was just time to move on. And sometimes that happens in life, and it's a real big blow to the ego for a lot of us, especially if we feel like we're on the receiving end. Although through therapy, I learned to not word things in that way, because that's a very victim-y type of statement. But outwardly anyways, for those who feel like they wanted to stay married or whatnot, it is very hard to get to that place where you can appreciate what you did have, and to recognize that things do run its course sometimes. Yes, you can point to relationships that do last, marriages that do last forever. My parents are happily married for over 50 years, and I'm very grateful for that and very happy to them. But that's one sort of aspect of a relationship when it comes to their lives. But, as I talked about earlier on about comparing and not giving into that demon of the comparison demon, if you will, recognizing that for many, the relationship will not last, but that doesn't mean that it was a failure. So I really related to Amy Poehler's beautiful words. Now, the next thing I wanted to bring up is something that Amy says about aging. Now, I'm not an old man, but I am in my middle ages, I guess you could say, 44 years old as of this recording. And I think Amy was about the same age when she wrote this book. Maybe she was 42. I got to check Wikipedia on that. Doesn't really matter. But she has something very interesting to say about aging. And again, I'll read from what she writes from page 101. She says, "Now that I am older, I am rounder and softer, which isn't always a bad thing. I remember fewer names, so I try to focus on someone's eyes instead. Although I have to interject, I've actually made an effort. I don't forget a face. Names I've never been good at, but actually now I find that with my older age, I tend to remember names better. I make a specific concentrated effort to remember names. People are always impressed with that. I don't do it to impress people. I do it for myself because I think it's important, and it does feel good to help other people feel good that somebody remembers their name, but I really make a concerted effort. Anyway, back to Amy. Sex is better and I'm better at it. I don't miss the frustration of youth, the anticipation of love and pain, the paralysis of choice still ahead. The pressure of what are you going to do makes everybody feel like they haven't done anything yet. Young people can remind us to take chances and be angry and stop our patterns. Old people can remind us to laugh more and get focused and make friends with our patterns. Love that. Young and old need to relax in the moment and live where they are. Be here now, like the great book says. And that great book that Amy Poehler is referring to is Ram Dass. Ram Dass' amazing book, which I actually just finished reading relatively recently. And that is so true. I think that with age, we start to realize more and more, at least if we're evolving and doing the work and growing, it doesn't come automatically necessarily with old age. But, for someone like Amy Poehler, who clearly is very introspective and does do the work and tries to grow, I can tell from, her beautiful words in her book. And if you are doing that work, then with that wisdom that comes with the old age, you also realize just the importance and value of being present. It also comes with a lot of therapy. My therapist has reminded me of that many times, just to be present, be here now. Such wise words, such a great quote from the great Ram Dass in his book, Be Here Now. Next thing I wanted to talk about was the idea of career and passion, which is also a very popular theme, I should say, for people that are kind of approaching the middle ages. I know for myself, it's something that I think about a lot. They talk about midlife crises oftentimes happening where somebody could have a certain career and then they reach middle age and that's it. They're done. They want to do something that they actually enjoy. So I thought it was interesting to quote from Amy's discussion of career and passion. It's a bit long, but bear with me because I think it is definitely worth sharing. And I appreciate you bearing with me here. Page 221. Your career and your passion don't always match up. Plenty of talented people don't have the careers they want. Plenty of untalented people make millions and make movies. There is a difference between determination and talent. Hard work doesn't always matter. You can be the best at making contacts and going after jobs, but then suddenly you want it too much. Suddenly everybody feels how bad you want it and they don't want to give it to you. Even at 6 years old, Archie, who's her son, is learning to stop paying attention to the toy he wants. He knows that if he lets on how bad he wants it, his 4-year-old brother will snatch and shiz up in a hot second. Pretending to not want something can work. Really not caring if you get it takes a lifetime of practice. I guess the Buddhists would call this idea a healthy detachment. Amazing. Too often we are told to visualize what we want and cut out pictures of it and repeat it like a mantra over and over again. Books and magazines tell us to create vision boards. Late night commercials remind us that anything is possible. Positive affirmations are written on our tea bags. I am introducing a new idea. Try to care less. Practice ambivalence. Learn to let go of wanting it. Treat your career like a bad boyfriend. Now, and I'm just skipping a bit. Now, before I extend this metaphor, let me make a distinction between career and creativity. Creativity is connected to your passion. the light inside you that drives you, that joy that comes when you do something you love, that small voice that tells you, I like this, do this again. You are good at it, keep going. That is the juicy stuff that lubricates our lives and helps us feel less alone in the world. Your creativity is not a bad boyfriend. It is a really warm, older Hispanic lady who has a beautiful laugh and loves to hug. If you are even a little bit nice to her, she will make you feel great and maybe cook you delicious food. Career is different. Career is the stringing together of opportunities and jobs. Mix in public opinion and past regrets. Add a dash of future panic and a whole lot of financial uncertainty. Career is something that fools you into thinking you are in control and then takes pleasure in reminding you that you aren't. Career is the thing that will not fill you up and never make you truly whole. Depending on your career is like eating cake for breakfast and wondering why you start crying an hour later. I really couldn't say it any better myself, and that's why I read from so many passages in this specific section. I don't have much to add other than to really just re-emphasize it, to underscore what she's saying there. Nobody's saying to stifle your passions or your creativity or anything like that, but don't necessarily tie it together with your career. And that really speaks to me, especially as somebody here who's doing a YouTube channel. And as I record this, maybe I have a few views, I have 1 subscriber, and I'm continuing to do this because what I do here really sparks my creativity. It gets my juices going. Sure, it would be wonderful if this channel becomes huge and I become the next Joe Rogan, as I talked about in a previous video. Of course, but that a lot of times it's letting go of that outcome, trying not to force everything or control what's going to happen or being too attached to it, as Amy Poehler says, quoting the sort of the Buddhist or Zen outlook. And really understanding the difference between the two. And again, there's nothing wrong with ambition and trying to go out and make things happen, but realizing that you don't have control over it, but also understanding that you can do things that you're passionate about and that you find creative. And one doesn't have to do with the other. Even if a career from it doesn't necessarily pan out, you can still enjoy the creative process of working on something. That's an amazing thing. It's coming to mind now. A lot of actors talk about taking roles that weren't financially lucrative, but they just enjoyed the role and the screenplay that they read so much that they wanted to take on the role. It was a challenge for them professionally as actors in their creative realm. As it happens, oftentimes it ended up being amazing decisions for them career-wise, but that wasn't even the intention of why they took it to begin with. And it goes to show you again that when you let go of that attachment to only going for the bottom line, or for as an actor in this instance, only trying to make a $10 million get a $10 million payoff on a movie, as opposed to letting go of that and taking roles that may be more challenging creatively, oftentimes you even end up doing better in the long run. Okay, so I just really love what Amy Poehler has to say here as well. Okay, we've got another 2, and then we're coming to a close. It's maybe a longer video than usual, but this book is so filled with pearls of wisdom. The next thing I wanted to talk about, I'm going to read from page 237 of her book, and she talks about the idea of emotion, which I really enjoyed. Again, this is a shorter one. It says here, I stomped upstairs and felt angry for about 5 minutes. And then I watched the anger travel through my body like a wave and leave. Emotions are like passing storms, and you have to remind yourself that it won't rain forever. You just have to sit down and watch it pour outside and then peek your head out when it looks dry. I love that. I mean, it's so true. It reminds me of the books I've read by Michael Singer, where he talks about learning to work and live with those emotions. A lot of these statements that Amy Poehler is making, you can tell, I'm assuming, and she's quoted Buddhism and Zen and the idea of non-attachment and things of that nature. And it's really true. If you let go of that attachment to that emotion and see it outside yourself, kind of harkens back to what she was saying earlier about that demon, and really allow yourself to live with that emotion. Even if it's not pleasant, you can dance with it, okay? She calls it a storm, and it won't rain forever. I just love the way she really sums that up. Now, the last thing I wanted to talk about was the idea of change, okay? And I'm going to quote from, or read from page 279, bunch of pages here to sum up. From page 279, talking about the idea of change. The only thing we can depend on in life is that everything changes. The seasons, our partners, what we want and need. We hold hands with our high school friends and swear to never lose touch, and then we do. We scrape ice off our cars and feel like winter will never end, and it does. We stand in the bathroom and look at our face and say, "Stop getting old, face. I command you." And it doesn't listen. Change is the only constant. Your ability to navigate and tolerate change and its painful uncomfortableness directly correlates to your happiness and general well-being. Similar themes here, if you see. See what I just did there? I saved you thousands of dollars in self-help books. If you can surf your life rather than plant your feet, you will be happier. Again, non-attachment, not being too firmly planted on the ground. Love that. And here on 282, people work around you and next to you, and the universe waits for the perfect time to whisper in your ear, "Look this way. There's someone in your life right now who may end up being your enemy, your wife or your boss. Lift up your head and you may notice." And that has to do with presence, I would say, being present to what's around you. And I'm going to be talking about this in another video I'm going to be doing soon, about the idea of noticing turning points in your life. And this kind of speaks to that idea of noticing and being present to certain situations and facts and circumstances that are occurring. Okay. And finally, here on page 286, she says here, she calls it time travel. You have to read the entire chapter and get the book to really understand what she's referring to here when she says time travel. But the more I time travel, the more I learn I am always just where I need to be. I love that. Be here now. Again, Ram Dass. So if I haven't convinced you by now, this book is so well worth it. It is filled with gems. It's also super entertaining. Amy Poehler, yes, please. It was a longer than usual video, so I won't do my usual summary. If you have any comments or feedback, if you have any books, from celebrities or otherwise that you find to be particularly helpful or have similar ideas or themes to this, I'd love to see that in the comment section below. Your feedback is always welcome. I hope you found this video enlightening, entertaining, educational, and I look forward to seeing you at the next video. Hey everyone, hope you enjoyed that video. I'd be grateful if you subscribe to the channel. You'd not only be helping me, you'd also be helping yourself to not miss a future video. Your comments and feedback are always welcome, and don't forget to hit the actual like button on the video as well. Looking forward to seeing you at the next one.